Hello, my name is Dr. Malcolm McNeill, and I am the Director of the SOAS Postgraduate Diploma in Asian Art, the host of today's panel discussion. At the SOAS Postgraduate Diploma in Asian Art, our programmes are centred on object-based learning supported by formal associations with the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum here in London. And our courses are underpinned by support from contributions from leading experts in academia, the museum world, and the art market. Today's event brings together a group of just such leading experts from the British Museum, Sotheby's in New York, and from Saffronart here in London, for a timely and topical discussion of the South Asian art world, collecting, curating, and research in 2020. And I'm thrilled that so many of you are joining us here today from all across the world. With over 400 registered participants from more than 40 countries, you are a part of a record-breaking audience for SOAS and a testament to the expertise of today's panellists. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Dr. Emily Shovelton, convener of the Indian Art module on the SOAS Postgraduate Diploma in Asian Art, to introduce today's panel and our esteemed panellists. Emily.
Thank you, Malcolm, for that introduction. I am delighted to be here representing the SOAS Postgraduate Diploma in Asian Art as one of the conveners for the Indian Art module. I would like to offer a huge and warm welcome to you, the audience, listening in from across the globe to our panel discussion on the South Asian art world, collecting, curating and research in 2020. I'm thrilled that we have three such engaging speakers on our panel who all contribute significantly to the South Asian art world in very different ways. They represent a range of expertise from the commercial to the academic, and we're particularly lucky that they can join us today as they all have pressing deadlines that we're going to hear about. So I will now introduce them all. Firstly, Anu Ghosh-Mazumdar, who is Senior Vice President and Senior International Specialist and Head of Department at the Indian and Southeast Asian Art in Sotheby's in New York. She joined Sotheby's in 2003 and was made Head of Department in 2011. She is instrumental in both Sotheby's sales of Himalayan and Southeast Asian art, but also modern and contemporary. She's contributed to initiatives outside Sotheby's and has lectured widely, and I would urge you to watch the webinar she contributed to on women in leadership a few years ago. Welcome, Anu. Our second speaker is Abha Housego, who is Senior Vice President at Saffronart and a leading auction house on online sales for South Asian material. And Abha heads the auction house in the UK, Europe and the Middle East. She joined the company in 2007 and led the opening of the London Gallery a year later. She has contributed to a number of panels to discuss Indian art and the art market. Welcome, Abha. Last but not least, Ima Ramos, who is Curator of South Asia at the British Museum, and we're all looking forward to her show that opens at the British Museum on the 24th of this month. As well as curating the exhibition, she also wrote an accompanying book which presents the very first historical exploration of tantric visual culture, from its origins to how it was reimagined in the West. Welcome, Ima. So while Ima works on tantric material and Anu and Abha work on a very broad range, I work on Persianate material from South Asia and Greater Iran. So we all come to Indian art or South Asian art from different perspectives, but our research is all interlinked. But what unites us all on this panel and you, the audience today, is a shared deep fascination in the arts of South Asia. And there's always something new to surprise us or challenge our perceptions. So this year, 2020, has seen tremendous shifts in the Asian art world as it responds to the technological and huge cultural changes that we've all witnessed. So let us begin. I will pose some questions to each of the panelists, and at the end we will be able to take some questions from you, the audience. So please can you type them into the chat function, which if you move your mouse across your screen, you'll see a little bar that comes up, and you'll see the little bubble with the lines on it that is the chat function. So please don't wait till the end, don't hold back, add them in as we go through, and then I'll reach them at the end. Okay, I'm going to start by asking each of the panelists to outline some of the challenges and highlights of their work this year, and what are some of the current priorities for anyone curating, collecting or researching in this field. So Anu, I would like to invite you to talk first. Can you tell us about your auctions in Sotheby's this year, and whether you've detected significant changes in collecting practices in 2020? Anu.
Thank you, Emily. I hope you can hear me. I hope everyone can hear me. A very good morning from New York to all of you. My thanks to Emily, to Malcolm, and to SOAS for inviting me to join the panel today. My greetings to my fellow panelists and to the audience. Thank you for having me. Emily, thanks for that question. 2020 has been an eventful year, to put it mildly. It's been unexpected, even surreal at times, and with non-stop challenges from almost the very beginning of the year. I think through it all, we've persevered, we've experimented, we've adapted, and we've worked mostly really hard to keep the juggernaut of South Asian art sales going at Sotheby's. Now, before I speak more to this, I wanted to preface my comments by saying that 2020 is actually an anniversary year for us in the Indian and Southeast Asian art department at Sotheby's. Firstly, we are celebrating 35 years of Indian, Himalayan, and Southeast Asian works of art sales. Our department is the longest standing department in this category in any auction house anywhere in the world. And together with that, we're also celebrating a very special anniversary, 25 years, Silver Jubilee, of modern and contemporary South Asian art sales at Sotheby's. As many of you may know, this particular category was introduced into the international auction market when Sotheby's had the historic sale of the Chester and David Hurwitz collection in New York in June 1995. 25 years since, this market has grown from strength to strength, and so many auction houses in so many different places are having sales of this material. But that story started 25 years ago at Sotheby's, and we are the standard bearers of it. Both our sales of traditional and modern South Asian art are held every year in March. It actually starts off the Asian art auction calendar at Sotheby's. And so we planned to have our sales just as we always do, never imagining how it was all going to unfold. The first hiccup was encountered in January, and it was a very small hiccup then, when we heard about a thing called COVID, which was spreading in Wuhan, China, which we didn't know very much about, and which was clearly going to affect our Asian art sales. And so the decision was quickly made to postpone the Indian, Himalayan, and Southeast Asian works of art sale to a later time in the year, but to carry on with the modern and contemporary South Asian art sales, which were due to be held on the 16th of March. And so we did just that. Here on the first slide, you see two of our leading paintings from this auction. On the left, Nasreen Mohammadi's Beautiful Untitled from 1963. And on the right, Vasudeo S. Gaitonde's Untitled, also from 1963. These were the two lead paintings in the auction, and I've shown a slide of them displayed in the exhibition. Now, I want to take just one moment to digress and talk a little bit about what we do in these auctions. Of course, it is a commercial enterprise, no question about that. But certainly with South Asian art, modern and contemporary, as well as traditional, we bring hidden masterpieces to light. And together with that, we bring the stories that accompany them to life. And that is exactly what we have done over here. Mohammadi and Gaitonde, who are considered leading exponents of South Asian modern and contemporary art, their arcs intersected very briefly in this time. Mohammadi and Gaitonde were friends. He was her mentor. And you can see the relationship here between their ideas and their practice. So what we were able to do here, incredibly fortunately, was bring these two works together, and we actually hung them onto opposite walls against each other. So you could literally see the dialogue going taking place between these two works. It's actually a small sliver of modern Indian art history that you can see here on this slide. And so our exhibition opened on the 11th of March, as it was supposed to have done. And that was also the very first day that the first COVID cases started appearing in New York City. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, as a counterpoint to the abstraction that you see in Mohammadi and Gaitonde's works, we included a section on Neo-Tantra in our auction. Over here, again, I must stop for a moment to say that this decision was completely influenced by Imad's show coming up at the British Museum, which we will hear about later in this program. And we figured that since this is a topical subject, we should have a section on Neo-Tantra, or the art inspired by Tantra, in our sale. You know, we do try to have some fun and curate our auctions when we can. And so here you have paintings by noted artists, P.T. Reddy, Biren De, G.R. Santosh, who are often seen in our auctions, but presented here, for the first time in this Neo-Tantra section. And together with that, we, for the first time, sold works by artists we had never shown before in our auctions, Acharya Vyakul and Mahirwan Mamtani. You know, it takes us days and months to put together these sales, plan our exhibitions, not to mention days and nights spent researching the artworks. So as I said, our exhibitions opened on the 11th of March. And the first COVID cases started being reported in New York City. The next few days were very tense, to say the least. On the one hand, we had mounting confusion and concern, and equally, in equal measure, on the other hand, we had mounting interest in our sale. So then, when it was Sunday, the 15th of March, 12 hours before our auction was due to take place, it was decision time. We sat and reviewed our interest list for the sale. We counted something like 45 online registrants and 40 telephones. So 85 people in all interested in various objects in the sale. There was no question that we were going to have our sale. And so we did. On the 16th of March, we all came in. It would be remiss of me to not thank all my colleagues at Sotheby's who helped out that day, starting from our CEO, our division heads who were in the sale room bidding with us on the phone, to our operations staff, registrars, art handlers, security, who all came in that day and helped us to have our sale. I'm so very grateful that we could do that. The sale was incredibly successful. Both the paintings by Mohammadi and Gaitonde were acquired by a leading institution, which we're very proud about. And who could have thought that we would have such a nice conclusion to such a dramatic few days. Next slide, please. Thank you. As a further continuation of the dialogue of art inspired by the sacred geometry of Tantra was an exhibition of art inspired by geometry itself. As I said, we like to experiment in this department. And to celebrate our 25th anniversary, we specifically curated and presented a selling exhibition called Crafting Geometry, Abstract Art from West and South Asia. This was a selling exhibition, so this is a retail model, quite different from the auction model. In the auction model, it was the interest of our clients, our market, that dictates what we do and how we do it. This was completely experimental. This is something that we mounted to celebrate our anniversary, and it was 2 years in the making. Crafting Geometry featured the work of 11 artists who all addressed the theme of geometry in some way or the other in their work. With perhaps 2 exceptions, all of these artists are either mid-career or senior artists, not sold in the auction circuit, and all sold in the primary market. So we worked with dealers and galleries to source these works for our show. We opened this exhibition, we displayed it alongside the auction preview. We opened the exhibition in late February together with our contemporary curated sale to try and get some crossover interest from the international contemporary art market and to start pre-selling the exhibition. This is a retail model. This is what you're meant to do. Our idea was that everyone who came into Sotheby's for Asia Week New York in March would see this exhibition, and that's how we were going to sell our show. However, at 5 p.m. on the 16th of March, after our auction finished, Sotheby's shut down and all of us went into remote work mode. So this exhibition had to close down 7 days before it was due to close down. And I feel so sad to this day that this beautiful show could not be seen by so many of the people who would have enjoyed viewing it. And so as we went into remote work mode post March 16th, we had to adapt how we sold works from the show. I think this is where our footprint as an international auction house with colleagues in different departments, handling clients who have varied interests, came to our service. And so throughout the course of the summer, with the application of a lot of elbow grease and a lot of emails, we managed to sell works from the show little by little. You see, on these slides, works by Lubna Chowdhury, Rana Begum, a wonderful Anish Kapoor still available for sale. You also see works by Rashid Arain, Stephen Naifeh, and Sahand Hassamian. We actually imported works from Beirut and Dubai for this exhibition. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now looking forward to the future, the very near future, we are getting ready to open our upcoming sale of Indian, Himalayan, and Southeast Asian works of art. That's right, Sotheby's is opening next Monday. Our exhibition of Indian, Himalayan, Southeast Asian works of art will open on the 18th of September. And it's led by this marvelous 9th, 10th century sculpture of Avalokiteshvara from Nepal, which was once collected by Abby Aldrich Rockefeller. It was collected by her in 1922 and hasn't been seen by anybody since then. So we are going to be revealing the sculpture for the first time ever in a century. And if that isn't amazing, I don't know what is. Next slide, please. 7 days later, our sale of Indian, Himalayan, Southeast Asian works of art will be on the 22nd of September in New York. 7 days later in London on the 29th of September, we will be having our auction, our second auction of modern and contemporary South Asian art. As if it wasn't fortunate that we had one Gaitonde in March, we have a second one. And this fiery, beautiful red-orange Gaitonde that you see on your right is one of the lead paintings in the sale. This was originally in the collection of Mr. Gunnar Hansen, who set up the business for Larsen and Toubro in India. On the right is a beautiful, very rare sculpture by Pilu Pochkanawala, a woman sculptor in modern Indian art, so rare in and of itself, which is accompanying the Gaitonde as the other lead object in the sale. And in our 25th anniversary year, we are so very proud to have led both our auctions of modern and contemporary South Asian art with works by women artists. In March, it was Nasreen, and in September, it's Pilu. And so we look forward to all of our clients rejoining us for our auctions and participating in our sales. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. I'll now move swiftly on to Abha and ask you, what have been the highlights of your sales this year, and have you seen any significant shifts in collecting practices at Saffronart in 2020? Abha.
Thank you so much, Emily and Malcolm, for having me on this, and all my other panelists and everyone watching. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background about Saffronart. Saffronart, because it answers your question about our practices, how we change them, actually began in 2000 purely as an online auction house. In 2000, that was quite a bold endeavor to try and sell art online, let alone Indian art online. The Indian art market was barely a few galleries, maybe 1 or 2 auctions. It was the entire auction market was $3 million US in 2000. Of course, we've moved on from there. What Saffronart did at that point was manage to go online and publish information about artists, because there weren't many books or publications about all our Indian art modern masters. It was just a very informal world of art collecting. So we managed to do that, which produced an infrastructure and greater transparency, which really built this Indian market. So of course now, 20 years later, also celebrating our 20-year anniversary, from one auction of 1 year to about 100 this year. So it's quite a huge shift. Of course, we started in modern and contemporary Indian art, which was our specialty, and still is that. And we were market leaders for that sector last year. And we have moved on to other, we sell antiquities and jewelry collectibles to a full serving auction house now. Next slide, please. Thanks, Patrick. The start of 2020 was challenging for us, besides COVID, for various reasons. Of course, we knew COVID was there, but it was still a faraway thing in China for us at the beginning of the year. So in February of this year, we were approached along with 4 other auction houses to tender by the government of India for seized assets of diamond merchant and jeweler Nirav Modi. He has been accused of sort of defrauding Indian state banks in the tune of $2 billion. The government of India had seized assets. He was a well-known art collector. Besides art, there were luxury goods like handbags, luxury cars, watches. We were very lucky. It was to win the tender from the government of India to hold this auction. But the caveat was we had to do it in 30 days, which, as Anu says, putting an auction together, not only getting the works, researching the works, and selling them and giving the money to the government of India at that time is nearly an impossible feat. So we were all completely into this for that whole time. Didn't even know that, I mean, we weren't even looking at COVID at that point. But as the sale went on, there were further challenges. Nirav Modi's son took the government to court, and that delayed the sale. Our sale was originally meant to be on February 26th, but he got a stay order. Very luckily, it was thrown out, but it did delay the sale to the 5th of March. And we're really coming to the time where, COVID and the lockdowns are coming. So I think we were extremely lucky to manage to just pull this off in the nick of time. I couldn't even travel back for the sale. I was there for the original date, but I couldn't even get back on the 5th. However, it was a record sale. We did raise $8 million, which is of course a drop in the ocean compared to what he owes, but it's still an amount for the government they were quite happy to have. It's quite new in India for governments to seize assets and auction them for value. So this was quite a novel thing for us to do. And the Hussein, which is, you can see in the article over there, made a record for the artist at that time, just under $2 million. So we were very pleased with this sale. At the end of this, we are going on to the middle of March. Next slide, please. So we're all working from home because we've all kind of in the middle of the lockdown by now. And I must tell you that India had one of the strictest lockdowns anywhere. So most of our offices, our head office is in India, and you couldn't even go out onto the street. There wasn't enough form to fill. It was only for medical emergencies or groceries. So it was extremely strict. So as a team, we were wondering, because we had our next sale planned in the summer, and we have a sister website called Story Limited. This site does slightly lower end price points and different categories of art. So we decided, we were all working remotely, maybe we should increase the number of sales we do, and that's what we did. During the lockdown, it was amazing. We did 43 sales, but we had to manage them all remotely, which was a huge challenge, which actually meant we never got the physical artwork to catalog. So getting some of our sellers to send us information, the back and forth. But what we were amazed about, and I think it's a credit to the Indian art market, how savvy it is online. And it just was such a huge success. One sale was such a huge success that we kept doing more. And now we've actually included them as a permanent feature on our story, which are bi-weekly sales. They're called Absolute Tuesday and Friday 5. And, people log in from all over the world. activate themselves by punching in their card details, and they can bid. And it is a seamless online transaction, which was amazing to see. So of course, March, April, May, we did that. And we also on Saffronart continued to source and complete our summer sale, which is a regular feature. Of course, we had to change it a little bit because we weren't allowed viewing still in London and New York and India. So, but we were very privileged to have a very successful sale then. And as we were going on and as everywhere opens up, we have now come to September, and we are privileged to have our September sale, which is usually a live auction in Delhi. Next slide, please. It's a live auction in New Delhi, but as that's not possible, here again, the advantages of being an online auction house has really come to the fore, because we've managed to do this as a live sale, but it will be a live sale with a different. It's kind of like an augmented reality. So there'll be nobody in the room, but we'll all be bidding. I don't have to travel to India, which is right now impossible, but remotely, London, New York, Delhi, all of us online. So, which is next week actually, and we are very privileged to be leading the sale with this Gaitonde. You just saw it in the previous presentation. He's a leading modernist. This superb work from 1974 comes from a Bombay collection, and it was acquired in 1975 and never been seen before. It's been with the same collection throughout. Next slide, please. These are two other highlights which are coming up for sale on September 17th. Jahangir Sabawala on the left, which is a modernist who manages to do a subtle cubist work with light, shadow, very important in his work. And this is called the Cactus Wave. I mean, you nearly don't know whether it's a desert or if he's doing the sea. It's the combination of the colors. And I don't know if you can see, it's right behind me here in the gallery. So I'm very happy to be sitting here. Another work that leads the sale is this Raza. And I think if you know Indian art, he's one name that I think comes up. He's one of the founders of the Progressive Art Group. And this Bindu work, which became his trademark with this beautiful blue, it sort of epitomizes his work. And we're very privileged to have it on the 17th. So in terms of, Emily, you asking me about sort of COVID and how it's affecting us. Of course, we've changed it. So, sorry, Emily, you have something to say?
No, I think time up. I'll ask you that on the next question.
Okay, fine.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Abha. And I'm now going to move on to Emma and ask you, how did you set about creating a narrative for your Tantra show? Fire away. Emma, over to you.
Thank you, Emily. So this exhibition, Tantra Enlightenment Revolution, aims to demystify Tantra and challenge the Western stereotype that it's a hedonistic guide to sex. The first major exhibition of tantric material culture in the West was held in 1971 at the Hayward Gallery in London, as some of you might know. It was advertised as an exhibition exploring the Indian cult of ecstasy, reflecting a particular reading of Tantra as a so-called cult that could overcome stifled attitudes to sexuality. This was very much a product of Tantra's reception in the West during the 70s, but the idea still persists today. So what exactly is Tantra? Tantra is an Indian philosophy which affirms all aspects of the material world as sacred and infused with divine feminine power. It teaches that enlightenment can be achieved rapidly by actively engaging with spiritual obstacles such as desire, aversion, and fear in order to ultimately transcend them. Tantric imagery is therefore unique in its inclusion of erotic and macabre symbolism. The central aim of the show and the accompanying book is to present the first historical exploration of tantric visual culture, from its origins in India to how it was reimagined later in the West. Tantra is rooted in sacred instructional texts, which were composed from around the 6th century onwards, called the Tantras, which are often written in the form of a conversation between a god and a goddess. We open the exhibition with some of the earliest surviving Tantras in the world, on loan from Cambridge University Library, like the one that you can see in the slide here. The exhibition is then divided into 4 major sections, which explore Tantra's link to successive waves of revolutionary thought, from its early medieval transformation of Hinduism and Buddhism to the Indian fight for independence and the rise of 1960s counterculture. So the first section of the show explores the rise of Tantra in medieval India. Power is central to Tantra, and that power is described as feminine. The Tantras were unique in their praise of women and the encouragement of their worship as goddesses, while women themselves could play powerful roles as independent practitioners. Tantra inspired the dramatic rise of goddess worship in medieval India, the legacy of which can still be felt strongly today. The next section of the exhibition explores the spread of Tantra across Asia via pilgrimage networks, with a particular focus on Tibet. One of the themes explored here is the role of sex and divine union in order to confront some of the more prevalent stereotypes. In tantric texts, gendered symbolism is often used to articulate the 2 qualities to be cultivated on the path towards enlightenment: wisdom and compassion. These are visualized as a goddess representing wisdom and a god representing compassion in sexual union. The goal is to internalize their qualities by visualizing the deities uniting within the body through meditation. The third section of the exhibition looks at how Tantra was harnessed for its insurgent potential during the fight for Indian independence in the late 19th century. Indian revolutionaries in Bengal reimagined tantric goddesses such as Kali as symbols of an independent India rising up against the British. Revolutionaries effectively exploited British fears and misconceptions of the goddess as a bloodthirsty demon mother. In the exhibition, the true meaning behind her symbolism will be decoded. This is an interpretive strand that runs throughout the exhibition. In each section, we highlight an object that demands extra unpacking, and we decode its symbolism using specially designed graphics. Next slide, please. In the final part of the exhibition, we explore how Tantra has been reimagined from the 20th century until today. Artists in Asia and the West have been inspired by Tantra, interpreting it as a radical movement capable of challenging repressive attitudes towards gender, sex, and politics. Today, Tantra is as alive as ever. Sects in India, including the Aghoris, reveal its enduring power. This image that you can see on the slide is from a photographic archive that we're exhibiting for the first time, documenting different tantric communities. We hope visitors to the exhibition will have the opportunity to not only experience an overview of the history of Tantra from its origins to the present day, but also acquire an understanding of Tantra as a philosophy that inspired masterpieces of visual culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your very interesting presentations. Thank you, Anu, for sharing what it's been like at Sotheby's this year. It's certainly going to be a year you never forget, from the sort of the ups of your anniversaries to the sort of traumas of having to close one of your shows. But I mean, how lucky that you got that March show hours before Sotheby's closed. And it's also really wonderful to see the connections that do forge between auction houses and museum collections. I know that you actively curated that Near Tantra section, knowing about the upcoming show that Emma is doing. So thank you also to Abha for such a detailed insight into Saffronart's also dramatic journey this year. And I very much like your Friday 5 and Absolute Tuesdays. Very good. I'm also interested that both of you are selling these Gaitonde pieces, which both Anu is selling one in March, and again there's one upcoming in your sale in a few weeks. And it'll be I'm sure you're all very interested to know how they do, given there was a recent sale of a Gaitonde in Mumbai that sold for a record price. So there's a lot to watch. Emma, your exhibition promises to be extremely eye-opening, and you will give visitors a richer and more accurate understanding of Tantra, and your story clearly urges us to revisit our preconceptions. And given the focus this year is more than ever on British colonial history, your show will clearly go a long way to challenge the idea that has been promoted since the colonial period, largely since the early 19th century, that Tantra was only about sex, entirely overlooking the ritual aspects of Tantra. And decolonialisation of teaching is certainly a preoccupation for SOAS, and more widely a theme of 2020. So let me move on to my second question. This global pandemic that we're all still experiencing, we don't know what's going to happen in the months ahead, has led many of us to find new ways to communicate. This webinar simply wouldn't have happened 6 months ago, although I'm very happy that it is. So Emma, I'm going to ask you first, how has COVID-19 impacted on how you and your colleagues work, and what adaptations you've had to make? And also, are these short-lived, sort of managing the crisis, or are they here to stay? Emma.
Oh, that's a great question, Emily. Yes, so there are a few things. When it comes to reduced capacity, that's something that we've had to be really aware of for the show, to assist with social distancing, of course. So we have a one-way route throughout the exhibition, and there's part within the exhibition space where actually imaginatively recreating a medieval tantric temple from Eastern India dedicated to yogini goddesses. And this is quite an immersive and exciting part of the show. So we had to work out how to ensure that we kept the social distancing restrictions, how we apply them to that space. So we can only have up to 2 to 3 people within that space at any one time, for example. And then one of the other things we've had to think about is in one part of the show that explores the role of human remains in Tantric Buddhist practice. That's been developed in consultation with members of the Tibetan community in the UK. And this actually includes their voices and perspectives via audio stops, but we've had to reduce touch points and therefore remove sound cans. So we've had to replace those with QR codes instead, so that people can just use their mobile phones and listen to the audio via their own mobiles. But that was a really integral part of the exhibition, so we had to think creatively around that. And then, of course, the public programme. We can't have any events on site, so that's all online now, all via Zoom. I mean, the wonderful thing about that is that we can increase access, so more people can join in. So we can reach a wider audience online, and they're all free. All of the events are free. We were going to have, people like the acclaimed musician Parvati Baul was going to come to give a concert. That's going to be streamed live now from India. We also had someone creating a sand mandala dedicated to Vajrayogini, the goddess. That's going to be live streamed from Bhutan now. He won't be able to come into the museum, but it's a good opportunity to reach a wider audience. The only other thing is, we've had international loans coming in, but the couriers haven't been able to come on site. So working with lenders, we've had to use remote condition checks, and install supervisions have been done digitally because the couriers haven't been able to travel with the objects, but that's been very successful.
Great, thank you very much, Emma. Moving on to Abha, can I ask you next? How has COVID-19, you've mentioned a little bit in your presentation, but can you give us a bit more about how it's impacted your work, and what exactly adaptations have you had to make, and are these ones that you're now going to keep going beyond the pandemic? Abha, over to you.
As I said, because we started online, it was slightly easier to maneuver things. Of course, we've tweaked them and changed them. As I said, for story, we've increased the number of auctions with more people comfortable online. But another aspect which I didn't cover earlier, which has come, which is new to us, which is something called the Partner Gallery Program. It's a fixed price exhibition because a lot of galleries in India don't have online presence like Saffronart does. And so they have come to us, a whole group of galleries, and we put their works online. So besides the auctions and our story auctions, this is a new thing that's come out of working in these times, because people have realized the importance of the online section, and these galleries, you know, they've existed for years, but it's nicer to have a bigger online presence.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Abha. And I'll now take the same question, similar question to you, Anu. Tell us more about how COVID-19 has impacted your work. I mean, obviously, you had to close those shows and auctions. What adaptations have you had to make with your colleagues? And again, are new patterns that are going to stay into the future? Anu.
Thank you, Emily, and it was really interesting to hear, obviously, what Ima had to say and what Abha had to say as well. You know, I'm going to start by quoting a phrase I read on ArtNet News soon after the pandemic was, you know, had affected all of us in full force and we were all in remote mode. Art is an in-person enterprise. I agree with that. And I will add that art is also a relationship enterprise. People like me at any given time are on a train, plane, or automobile trying to get from point A to point B to meet people, look at work, talk about it, and do our business. Not being able to do that physically was, to me, particularly challenging. How am I going to get things to sell if I can't go look at them and if I can't go and speak to the people who own them? This has been certainly difficult. In terms of the sales that we have coming up in September for both Indian Himalayan art as well as modern and contemporary South Asian in London, Indian Himalayan was a sale which was supposed to have taken place in March. It was postponed to later on in the year. All of that property was already in the building. It had been catalogued, and it was just a question of organizing it all and getting it ready for sale. Modern and contemporary South Asian art in London certainly did not magic itself into being by any means. It required colleagues, dedicated colleagues, who wore their masks, gloves, and PPE, and who went to the homes of clients to take out these paintings, ship them by commercial, not commercial carrier, but freight carrier, go into the office, have them photographed, have them catalogued. And so this has continued even through the lockdown. It hasn't been easy. Technology has often been called a disruptor. I think in this case, or certainly for these past few months, it has been a savior. Because what we have done at Sotheby's is just pivoted online. We've had 185 auctions the first 7 months of the year. Most of them were online. Everything has just been able to be put online, which has been frankly remarkable. Having a captive audience in the form of clients who have also not been able to go here or there, who are at home looking at their computers, that has helped as well. We've had a massive rise in sales. What we've sold online, the property we've sold online, when we compare the first 7 months of this year with the first 7 months of last year, there's been a 540% increase in the volume of works sold online, because it has always been online. All of it has been online, sorry. In terms of how we've been working with colleagues, of course, we've had to adapt. We've had to switch to remote work. It's been, of course, a different experience where in certain cases you're used to huddling around a table and looking at something and putting it together. You now do that remotely on a conference such as the one we're having now. But through it all, I think everyone's resilience, everyone's dedication is what has seen us through.
Thank you to all of you for sharing a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted you this year. It's clearly been very, very, very challenging and stressful at times, but somehow you have managed, the auction houses, you have managed to keep going in this amazing way. And Emma, you've had to think on your feet and create all these new ways to engage with your audience, which does have a positive side, as you say. It's broadened your audience, and I'm sure we're all going to look forward to those online live events that are coming up. And we had a webinar some months ago that was purely focused on the East Asian art market and the impact of COVID. And this idea that came up was that auctioneers and gallery owners and curators are at something of a digital pivot, where some of these processes that we already had in place, you know, as Anu said, we may even find technology annoying, suddenly have shifted us to a new direction, which on the whole is largely positive and obviously has been necessary. And it seems that you three are all on that same path. So anyway, I'll now move on to the third question, a little bit more of a personal question to each of you, because I want to ask you about your career trajectory, as I'm sure there are students in the audience who are curious. You will have noticed that this is an all-female panel, which I have to say was deliberate and very much supported by Malcolm. And it seems rather appropriate that we have Emma, who works on tantric philosophy that is centered on the power of the divine feminine energy. And Anu and Abha, you're both of Asian heritage, and it would be interesting to hear your experiences. There are a lot of people listening in here from all over the world, many from India today. Tell us about your experiences working in Europe and the States. So more specifically, I'm now going to turn to Abha first, please. Did you have good mentoring early on in your career, and what advice, if you have any, for someone who wants to join your world? Abha.
I was very lucky. I mean, I'm not sure how, but I did know that I wanted to do history of art. We didn't have many programs in India, which is why Emily and I were at university together at SOAS. And that's where I think even your mentor, Jerry Losty, very kindly gave us an internship, which then turned to a job at the British Library. That was great because while being there, I realized I certainly didn't want to do a PhD and go into academia. So that was the best thing that happened. And subsequently, I moved to a gallery, and it was in London, which actually specialized in company school. But the gallery owner in the Patricia let me set up a whole modern and contemporary art section. And that really, he was just my mentor who really gave me the freedom to do that. And that's how I got hired by Saffron to do the same, to set up London. And I have to say, it's been a great, it's just worked out well, because I don't think I wouldn't have been very happy doing that PhD. I quite like, as Anu said, meeting people, and the number of objects you actually get to see in an auction house was incredible compared to, sometimes being behind the books. So I have learned so much just being here.
Brilliant, Abha. We did indeed both take different directions after our job in the British Library. Emma, can I ask you now, can you tell us about your path to curating after completing your PhD at Cambridge? Emma.
Thanks, Emily. Well, yes, I mean, similarly, I studied history of art at uni, and I stayed for a master's and a PhD. And I suppose, as soon as I started my undergraduate degree, I focused my dissertation subsequently first on Rajput painting, and then for my PhD, I worked on pilgrimage sites dedicated to the goddess Sati. But while I was studying, I actually worked as a researcher on art documentaries part-time for several years while I was at university. And during that time, I really learned to appreciate the art of storytelling, and particularly how to make research accessible to a general audience. So I think that in combination with my studies really fostered a passion for object-based research, but also how to make research accessible to as many people as possible. So I suppose I've been the British Museum. This was my first museum job. I had done some work experience as well at the BM and the V&A. But I've been at the BM for about 5 years now, and you know, I've had the opportunity to work on exciting projects there, including the redevelopment of the South Asia Gallery. So so I suppose that has been my trajectory up till now.
Thank you, Anu. And now, I'm sorry, thank you, Emma, even. Now can I move on to Anu and ask you, can you tell us a little bit about working in New York? Has it been more challenging being a woman or in the art world, or is it already more diverse in other environments? Is that question actually irrelevant? Tell us more about your career, Anu.
Sure. So I arrived in New York in 1998, and I've lived here now for 22 years. I was born and raised in India, of course. I never thought growing up in India that I would be a part of the art market, leave alone be doing anything akin to the job that I'm doing now. I am trained as a historian first. My bachelor's degree is in history, and marketing was always my first love. So whilst I was at university doing my first MA in ancient Indian art history and archaeology, I also acquired a diploma in marketing and communications. And I had a job in an advertising agency for 1.5 years before I moved to New York. That was kind of going to be my trajectory. But once I arrived here, I just got sucked into this, you know, energy that courses through this place. And the other interesting thing about New York is that not only is it a mecca for art, and of course, once I arrived here and did the round of museums, there was no question this is what I was going to do. But the other thing I would add is that this is such a diverse place. Everyone who is here is from somewhere else. And so I didn't feel at all like an outsider, if you know what I mean. What I did have to do is work very hard, of course, because I knew no one. I did do my second master's in Museum Studies Applied Arts from the State University of New York, had marvelous professors there who really helped and mentored. Emily, you asked about mentoring. Having that kind of teaching, having those kinds of professors was so helpful. I had internships in auction houses and museums, which helped me to build my network. And more than anything, I feel I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. I started my career in museum, actually, at the Asia Society Museum, not very far from Sotheby's, which was such a door opener for me. And in 2.5 years later, I landed up here at Sotheby's, and I've been here ever since. So I think it was a combination of certainly mentoring, circumstances, and also being in the right place at the right time. Of course, hard work underlying it all. In terms of gender, I think you asked about women and diversity. As I've said, New York is already very diverse. There are a lot of women in the art industry, I feel. Where the imbalance is at the top. All of the leadership positions, I feel, are still dominated by men. In the last 20 years that I've worked in this field, I've seen in both museums as well as in the commercial sector, you know, a group of very senior, revered specialists, mostly men, either retiring or, you know, leaving to set up their own businesses, and being replaced by younger people, be it curators or specialists, mostly women, which is great. And now we have to change the leadership equation.
Brilliant, thank you. I want to be able to sum up all these questions, but I must move swiftly on because I really want to include some of the many questions from the audience. So first of all, I've got anonymous directed to both Anu and Abha. While I understand how both houses have described their experiences under lockdown, have there been noticeable changes in collectors' tastes as opposed to new buying habits? So Abha, I'm going to put that to you.
I don't think there's been that much of a change. I would say there's been a renewed interest. I think in the beginning there was a bit of hesitation in terms of not buying art, but just being sure of where the world is going, because everything was so unsure. But seeing that the first few auctions did, there was success, I think people are still looking for those rare Gaitondes and Razas. I think that's not going to change. Of course, I think that just got renewed in the lockdown, and if not, the fact that we've just set a world record for Indian art, not just for a Gaitonde last week, shows that the market is extremely strong. I think it's just a confirmation of that fact.
Thank you, Abha. And Anu, can you briefly respond? Because actually I can see there are quite a few questions about collectors' tastes, and has there been a change this year? Anu.
I would echo absolutely what Abha has said. For South Asian art, the market has shown great resilience in terms of a broader picture, because at Sotheby's we sell, so many different kinds of art from different collecting categories. There has been a lot of cross-category interest, which has been unique. For the first time we're looking at it. We don't quite know how to answer it, other than the fact that people are in lockdown and in front of their computers. But a lot of cross-category buying, yes, that has been something new. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Anu. Question for Emma that I'm just going to read out now. This is really something you mentioned briefly, which was the Yogini temple. What were the thought processes and challenges in recreating sacred space within the museum context, particularly considering the history of the temple setting in the recreation of the Yogini temple? So, Emma, can you please respond to that? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, so the temple that we've been inspired by in the space dates to around the 10th century. It's located in eastern India, in Odisha, in a place called Hirapur. It's one of the more famous temples dedicated to the yoginis. In fact, these were built between the 10th and the 14th centuries all across India by different dynasties. So this is one of them. And the temple itself, it's open to the elements. It's unique because it's circular. And there are 64 yogini goddesses that are on display just sort of around the temple. So in the exhibition itself, we were only able to show 12 of the yoginis. So this is very much, and we've been clear about it, this is not an exact recreation of the temple. This is very much an evocation of the temple. But what we've done is we've worked with a team called Center Screen, who specialise in creating audio-visual experiences. We've worked with them to create an immersive experience so that as you go in, there are sort of different effects that are inspired by medieval Sanskrit texts that were written around the time that these temples were venerated. And what we wanted to do is, because these texts describe different forms of devotion and ritual associated with the yoginis, which take place at night and during the day, we wanted to, within a 3-minute period, create a sense of the kinds of rituals, the mood of those rituals that took place at night and during the day. So as you go in, you get an experience of that. And we have actors reading out the extracts of those texts. So it's a sort of 3-minute immersive experience, which is very much an imaginative one. We have someone also reading out the original Sanskrit, and but it was a really, really interesting experience because it's very, it's quite creative really, but it's trying to respond creatively to original Sanskrit texts.
Thank you very much, Emma, for that response. I can't wait to see it, the whole show, but particularly that room I think is going to be fascinating. So I know we're going over time, but I think I'm just going to ask one more question, which will divide between Anu and Abha, which is, generally speaking, are individual pieces achieving similar prices on online auctions as they do in traditional in-person sales? Can you just very briefly, Anu first, give me some comments on that? Anu.
For South Asian art, we haven't yet had a sale. The first sale we had this year was live, and the second sale we're about to have in the second half of the year is live. So I can't speak for South Asian art, but certainly for some other collecting categories, again, like I said earlier at Sotheby, so many different kinds of pieces are sold. We have seen records being set for works that are being bought online, in Impressionist art and design, in Russian art, and so many different collecting categories. Records are being set. This market is incredibly resilient, at risk of repeating myself.
Okay, very, very good. Okay, and Abha, can I ask you the same question briefly?
Yeah, I mean, we only did our first live auction in 2013, and pretty much well before that, all our sales were online. And I think, honestly, the collectors are so savvy, especially in Indian art, they're looking for the best piece of art, not whether it's online or live, they're going to buy it. So I don't think that makes such a difference, especially when we're talking about the top of the art market.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. I'm just going to, I know we're going over time, so I'm now going to draw the questions to an end and offer a few concluding remarks before I pass you back to Malcolm to end this panel. What's really wonderful having three of you here is that the commonality in that you, whether you work in an auction house or a museum, you're all working very directly with the objects as part of your everyday job, just with very different remits. And you all need to research and get to know the objects that you encounter. So I don't think, of course, any of you and the audience would want to stop engaging with the physical object and keep all their art appreciation or collecting online. Curators, collectors, and researchers will continue to want to engage with their material in the flesh, but with this ever increasing digital potential is something we're clearly all embracing. And there are new exciting pathways that are opening up to interact and access this material from across the world. But certainly online sales, digital interaction, are a strong hallmark of 2020. So on that note, I just want to say a huge thank you to our three panelists, Anu, Abha and Emma. You've all been fantastic, and I'm sure we could all carry on this discussion for a lot longer. And wanted to thank Malcolm for his support, and also Patrick Munger, who's been the digital DJ, making this all happen, reminding me to get my camera off mute and things like that. And lastly, just want to thank the audience for giving your time and joining us from wherever you are, and for your kind comments and questions. So thank you very much, and I'll now hand you over to Malcolm.
Thank you so much, Emily, Anu, Abha and Emma, for what has been a really informative and for me a very eye-opening presentation. It's such a pleasure to be able to listen to your insights and your comments on today's topical theme, to see where your views are addressing different questions, where they overlap, and where is this sort of shared space within the Venn diagram that is scholarship, collecting and curating in the South Asian art world in 2020. It's been such a pleasure to be able to share these professional, scholarly and personal experiences with such a wide audience from across the world. And I really think this underpins much of what we strive to do in the postgraduate diploma in Asian art at SOAS, bringing audiences together globally for our online offering in 2020. Our next full-time module, the Indian art module, is available online from the 5th of October to the 23rd of December of this year. And if you'd like to find out more about that, to have more of these kind of scintillating conversations with leading scholars, curators and art market professionals, tutored by the very capable hands of Dr. Emily Shovelton, then I would strongly encourage you to get in touch with us through asianart@soas.ac.uk. So thank you once again from me and from our Director Emeritus and Founder, Dr. Heather Elgood, to Emily, to Anu, to Abha and to Emma. And thank you to all of you for joining us from across the world and making this event the success it has been. I look forward to seeing you at our next event and to seeing some of you in our classroom in October. Thank you.